Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Here we are on a Wednesday night, the 5th of June, 2019. And let me just say right off the bat, a number of you have mentioned it and have given it high praise. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We started a new feature, and it seems to be working quite well. It's in the morning here on YouTube and also on Facebook, called Weather in 5. 5 minutes, you get 5 days. And it's quick and to the point, and it works in the morning because it's hard to sit through a long live stream when you've got a lot of things to do with the day ahead. So it's a good way to get you started, and then we'll come back. We have our usual nighttime live stream. So look for it, Weather in 5. I usually post it up sometime around 9 a.m. or so, but if weather dictates and if I wake up early enough, you might see it a little bit earlier. All right, we've got some severe weather going on tonight. A couple of severe thunderstorm watches that are working, and I've noticed a few tornado warnings earlier in parts of Ohio. We've got this east-west line, severe thunderstorm watches that are up. That was a pretty large severe thunderstorm watch that extended from western Missouri all the way into a small, just about to the Pennsylvania-Ohio line. And now that western part has been taken down, so it's no longer in effect for Illinois and back through Missouri, but we've got new severe thunderstorm watches going up for parts of Kentucky and southern Illinois and southernmost Indiana. We also have a working severe thunderstorm watch up for North Carolina, Virginia, to the northeastward to Virginia and the Delmarva Peninsula. We are also seeing, by the way, rain from this tropical system, the one that was in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico that never developed, but now all that tropical moisture had to go somewhere, and it has indeed into southeast Texas and into Louisiana, and now moving into parts of Mississippi. That tropical moisture, by the way, is important because it's going to be moving into the southern states through and into the southeast in the next couple of days, kind of getting on hold for a little while, and then eventually it's going to make its way up the East Coast, but probably not until Monday. So if you were counting on a good weekend in the Northeast and probably into the northern mid-Atlantic states, I think you can hold on to that. Certainly Friday and Saturday look good. Maybe the southern end of that range winds up with some issues on Sunday, but the northernmost mid-Atlantic on up through the Northeast should have a good day Sunday as well before weather conditions deteriorate. Slight risk in West Texas there. You see it. Of course, this is all encompassed inside a larger area of marginal risk. One of the things that's playing out, by the way, with these thunderstorms, and also because of the influx of all that tropical moisture, is going to be rainfall over the next 7 days. And WPC, who I always say does a really good job, it is producing some pretty big rains here of 5 inches or more across the Gulf states through much of the southeast, especially away from the coast. I mean, the numbers are a little lower on the coast, but not that much lower. But you've got some pretty hefty rainfall amounts over the next 7 days extending up into Virginia. And even as you go further north from there, on up into New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, into southern New England, you are looking at minimum 1.5 to 2 or 3 inches. And I think the bulk of this is going to wind up coming out of whatever we get for later Monday night into Tuesday. So very, very busy in the east. Not so much in the west, starting to calm down a bit once you go from the Rockies west toward the west coast, although there is a little bit of action up in the Pacific Northwest, but nothing exceptional. We're seeing some rainfall amounts of about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in inland areas there, but other than that, I think that area is in pretty good shape. Here's an outline. You can take a look from the Weather Service's watches and warnings map tonight. You see those working severe thunderstorm watches. One of the things that happens is as the storms play through, you start to see pieces of that severe thunderstorm watch coming down, and that's why you have a bit of a cutoff there with that part of the severe thunderstorm watch that goes into northeastern Ohio. And you also see that slew of reds. Those dark reds are all flash flood warnings. They are also showing up across Indiana, the southern half of Indiana, into southern Illinois. Also seeing it in northwestern Missouri. I'm just going to freshen this up to make sure that I got the latest one. And it seems that I do. And then you have, of course, the severe thunderstorm watches up in North Carolina on up through southeastern Virginia into the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula. Flood watches and some flash flood warnings, southeast Texas and the southern half of Louisiana and southern Mississippi. And that really is about it with respect to the watches and warnings that are all either directly or indirectly related to severe weather issues that's going on at the moment. So here's a full U.S. satellite view tonight. We are watching. Look at all this tropical moisture. I mean, this was all in the southwest Gulf. It never did develop into a tropical depression or a tropical storm, and the National Hurricane Center has no impending systems that they're watching for the next 48 hours and also out over the next 5 days. But that's a lot of tropical moisture shooting up from the Bay of Campeche on into the Gulf Coast and then advecting northward from there. And of course, you've got this cold front that's at work, and that's moving across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. We certainly saw a big change today. The dew points came way up, and certainly going from dew points in the 30s and 40s to dew points in the 60s, you're definitely going to feel it as far as discomfort. It's not the crazy discomfort that you get in the month of August, but nonetheless, it was quite a change now that beautiful dry air mass that we had has gone away. So the close-up view from the Storm Prediction Center here for the severe weather areas, you'll notice that the tornado risks that are up, even in that enhanced risk that's in parts of the Ohio Valley, the risk for tornadoes is actually rather low. Here's the categorical risk. So you got that enhanced area and then the slight in the Ohio Valley back over toward the middle Mississippi Valley and the slight risk in the Carolinas. But when you look at the risk being indicated for tornadoes, it's at 2%. If it was in the severe weather outbreaks that we've had over the last couple of weeks, we saw numbers up in the 30% range. So that nowhere compares. So that's why I'm thinking, and we're seeing that with the outcomes of what's happening so far today, that much of the impact has been more in the lines of rain and maybe some wind and hail. So with respect to wind, these are the probabilities: 15% and 30% in the enhanced area, and 15% with regards to hail itself. And with respect, we'll just give a quick jump to tomorrow. The severe weather risk tomorrow shifts to the northern Rockies, where we have a slight risk there, and across eastern and southern Texas, where we have slight to enhanced risk. Between Houston and Corpus Christi, you've got that area of enhanced risk, and marginal risk going all across Louisiana and into Mississippi. And while we do have a general risk for thunderstorms up the East Coast, even into southern New England, notice that we don't have any marginal risk here. It's just an area of general thunderstorm activity. So here's what it looks like. First, focusing on the area to the north, where we have these thunderstorms from Ohio back through southeastern Ohio, extreme northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. There's a pretty solid line here of storms, and we're also seeing various severe thunderstorm warnings that have been posted. The flow is southwest in the east, and you've got low pressure. You can see that closed isobar that is from Lake Erie and Lake Ontario going back into southern Michigan and into northern Ohio and northeastern Indiana. So there's where your low pressure is. And there's an east-west cold front that lies back across the Great Lakes that's going to be swinging around, and that's what we're going to wait for tomorrow to come through. And when that happens, there could be another shower or thunderstorm with that. But for tonight, You've got this area out in Pennsylvania that's moving eastward. And then we also have some pop-ups in parts of New Jersey at the moment. Just refreshed a bit. There were some small thunderstorms that popped up on the local radars in the last hour. I'm not really overly concerned with any of these blossoming out into severe weather. We did see some stronger thunderstorms down now over the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula and down into North Carolina. In fact, I want to just get the mesoscale a little bit further to the south. This should have actually gone further south. Yeah, there we go. I need to scroll down. So there you see the thunderstorms extending in eastern North Carolina. They're kind of outside their slight risk area now. They're more inside that marginal risk area. And then you have some storms in South Carolina down near the southeast corner and in southeastern Georgia and extending west there across the Gulf states. We'll have a wider view on the radar to take a look at in a moment. So here we have the latest surface map. Warm, humid air. The warm sector is basically set up. You've got this stationary boundary running from southern New Hampshire across New York State, just north of I-90, and going west to about Buffalo. And then you've got this surface low that's up in northern Michigan and another one in Lake Michigan itself that was analyzed at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Let's see what if the latest map is in. Should be by now, the 5 o'clock, the 21Z. And in fact it is. And you can see that boundary across upstate New York really hasn't moved. The low is north of Lake Erie. And then you have that trailing cold front that runs back from Detroit to Chicago, through northern Illinois and through northern Iowa. The dew points and temperatures in dew points are in the 70s to near 80 to the north. The dew points are in the 50s to near 60, so that's reasonable dry air, not overly dry, but dry enough. And then, of course, in the warm sector, we're looking at dew points, especially down in Virginia and North Carolina. You've got dew points up into the upper 60s and low 70s. So the air is juiced up further south. Up our way, because we had so much dry air. It was a lot of work just to take those dew points up into the 60s, which we've succeeded. But we're mostly low 60s across the Hudson Valley and upper 50s and low 60s in New England. And then you start to see the dew points pick up a bit. As you head into Pennsylvania, you start to get into some middle 60s. Down into Maryland and Virginia, you're seeing upper 60s. And then, of course, you get into those dew points that are in the low 70s. Remember, folks, on these radars that we show you, it's 7:15 Eastern time, so you want to make sure you check with your local National Weather Service office for the latest radars and severe weather information if you're watching this on a replay later tonight, and you can access that by going to weather.gov. The northeast radar view just isolated a bit. You've got some rain and downpours in upstate New York, so that's running along and north of that frontal boundary. And on the other side of that, you've got this extension from the stronger thunderstorms back in Ohio, now moving into the northern half of Pennsylvania. That area is holding together fairly well. I'm not seeing any big individual thunderstorm cells in there at the moment. And then, of course, you've got this line that is running from just south of the Delaware Maryland state line in the Delmarva Peninsula over Chesapeake Bay, southeastern Virginia, and heading into eastern North Carolina. The wider view, let's get you a refresh here. And there's how it looks. Very busy radar tonight east of the Rockies. You're seeing the Gulf moisture that is out in southeast Texas and in southern Louisiana. That's some heavy rains that are moving through that part of the country. And you have some lighter rains to the northeast, but there's some heavier embedded thunderstorms in parts of Mississippi and Alabama. So this area, especially as we get into Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, this area was bone dry for much of the last 2 weeks. You're going to make it up big time going forward as we set up this situation for the weekend and the first part of next week. Here's the band running east-west from Pennsylvania back over through southern Ohio, through southern Indiana. Some pretty strong cells in there in that mix. Southern Illinois and back up into northeastern Missouri. Why don't we just let me just bring up, let's just see what kind of working watches and warnings we have. And again, looks like we have, first off, in Ohio, in northeast Ohio, including Cleveland, we do have flash flood warnings that are up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 counties in northeast Ohio, all under flash flood warnings at the moment. And when we head out further to the west, let's check out what's going on in southern Illinois. 3 counties there in southernmost Illinois, and I think we might have a few scattering in parts of Indiana. Let me just roll this up north of Louisville, see what we get. There you go. So you do have some working flash flood warnings. That most of the thunderstorm activity has moved south of this area, so that's residual from the rainfall that we've had. And notice, by the way, as you go to the south, you've got a peppering of severe thunderstorm warnings running from Madison to Jasper and on westward from there. So again, I think the main emphasis through all of this with the severe weather tonight is really going to be more the rain than anything else. Okay, so what does our future hold, you ask? Well, the main battle here with regards to what's happening with the upper air, let me just set it up, and well, it's going to need to load first, so let's let the maps load up. You know, starting with tonight, and of course you've got this short wave that is moving through the east, and you also have, remember, there was an upper low, just back it up there, in California and Nevada. There's your East Coast trough back on Sunday, and of course that southern system gets kicked along in the flow and maintains an identity, and you are going to find it tomorrow in Oklahoma and northern Texas, which justifies the severe weather risk that SPC has. And of course, as we look here in the east, we've got this sort of gentle northwest flow that develops thanks to an upper low that's up in near Labrador. And now we're going to move our way into the weekend. So here's the situation. Nothing has really changed in terms of the upper air profile. You've got a trough off the east coast, a northwest flow in New England, the southern edge of that flow, that last height line, that 585 height that you see here, that where it says 585, I don't know if you can see it, but that's the number that's the height line that goes through the southern part of Lake Superior. So you've got this very narrow ridge. It almost looks like a finger that is poking through, separating the trough that's off to the east and the cutoff upper low that by Saturday afternoon is in northern Mississippi, western Tennessee. So that ridge is a mode of protection holding that upper low back. You also, by the way, while this is going on, notice that there's a strong upper trough swinging into the northwest and the Rockies. So eventually what's going to happen is that ridge in the east, which is there on Sunday morning, you've got this closed upper high centered probably right over Philadelphia, and then you've got this upper low that's back in western Tennessee, still being pinned back because you've got that trough off the east coast. So the key to the weekend weather being okay in the northern mid-Atlantic and into the northeast is the fact that that upper high is holding. This is not an issue for upstate New York, for I think all of New England, because of the fact that the northwest flow there is still hanging on, and you're north and east of the upper ridge. Now you go south of where the upper ridge is, and you start heading down into, say, southern Virginia and points southward and westward from there. Here's where you're going to run into trouble with regards to rain for Sunday. And then as we move along, going into Monday, that upper low, that trough, the ridge is starting to weaken. The trough is still there from Kentucky on southward. You've got this northern shortwave that comes down and basically just amplifies, pulls up that tropical moisture as much as it can, and brings it up the east coast for Monday night into Tuesday before ultimately the the trough in the east overwhelms. Very interesting here. I'm looking at this for the first time, and I'm just noticing how the trough in the eastern part of the United States really strengthens later next week, and you get a big ridge that pops up along the west coast and on up into Canada. So the GFS drops a pretty sharp-looking trough there later next week from Lake Superior southeastward into South Carolina and Georgia, and then lifts that arm up to the northeast. So I'm going to be curious to see what this has in terms of the surface. So let's take a look at that going forward and see what it brings us. All right, so we know that tonight, at least from the standpoint for my area, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, we're going to have some downpours. There might be a couple of thunderstorms in the mix. Not anticipating anything severe. I think you're going to find that the storms are going to be, kind of clustered in clusters rather than one big line. I don't think that we're looking at widespread shower and thunderstorm activity. There will be dry periods in between. And then the bulk of it is done before daybreak. Now, the cold front itself is kind of hanging back a little bit here. So don't be shocked if there's another shower or thunderstorm somewhere tomorrow afternoon. I think it'll be scattered in nature, and it should be partly sunny in between. Finally, the front goes by, and now here's where we set up for Friday and the weekend. You start to build that ridge, so you're going to have a surface high that develops, and indeed you see it there, that 1020 high that's up near James Bay. That is going to strengthen and push all that moisture further south. North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Illinois, across the Gulf states from Louisiana eastward, and into northernmost Florida. So in this area here, as we go into Friday and into the weekend, we're going to probably see numerous showers and thunderstorms. And of course, with this upper low working, it's not a surprise. Meanwhile, just go north of there, you've got that high up in upstate New York and Vermont just kind of holding in. This is not a situation where it's going to get hot. You notice that our isobars are coming in from the east. So that's going to hold the temperatures down, probably in the 70s to maybe some low 80s inland. The flow, at least from where the high position is not a moist one. So that's good too, because we're not going to be dealing with endless low clouds here. We will have at least some sunshine each day. I think one of the things you'll have to worry about perhaps is with the rain in the southern parts of the mid-Atlantic on southward, that perhaps some high clouds from time to time could stream northward. So there's going to be a zone somewhere in there where the dry air from New England and upstate New York is going to be trying to filter southward and pushing southward, while that moisture to the south is trying to lift up to the north. And at times you'll be in an area where the high clouds win, and at times you'll be in an area where the dry air from the north will win. Sunday, that high holds on, starting to grudgingly give way. This is Sunday evening at 8 o'clock. We're seeing showers and some downpours and thunderstorms coming into eastern Virginia, up through Maryland and northwestward into western Pennsylvania, but they're not really pushing up along the coastal plain. And some heavier storms around that surface low that you see down in Alabama. Now remember, you're going to have this sharpening trough that's going to be swinging through the Great Lakes. So this is where you start to lift all of this up the East Coast for Monday night, and into Tuesday. And later on Tuesday, the cold front with this moves off. Now, let's see what it does for later in the week when you've got this next sharpening trough swinging around. So you've got this energy swinging around the Great Lakes. You're still going to be left with a bit of a frontal boundary here from the Carolinas down into the Gulf states. And that's where another low comes up. So you see what happens, that northern energy, remember that upper low, that trough later next week is swinging around the Great Lakes and going negative, and it's picking up on some leftover energy in the southeast and runs that up the East Coast. So this would certainly argue for the possibility that there could be some rain showers coming back, say, Wednesday night and Thursday into the northern mid-Atlantic and on up into southern New England. That moves along. And we're going to ignore the fact that there is some kind of tropical system there that comes out of the Northwest Caribbean and runs up toward Louisiana, all right? Because the rule here is that when the models are showing tropical systems beyond the 5 to 7 day time frame, we really don't take it very seriously. we are in a place now where we're going to see this stuff getting spun up on a regular basis. So let's get used to the fact that they're going to show up in the longer ranges of the runs. And remember that there's probably a 95 to 99% chance that it's not going to be there. So just for laughs, we'll take it through in the long haul. And I guess with this troughing in the east, it does, kind of look like it's got an active pattern as we go into Father's Day weekend. Well, we'll see. I mean, I suppose it's possible that will be the case, but we'll reserve judgment until we get there. So right now, you know what? Let's just, for laughs, because we'll be doing this more and more, I'm going to go to the Hurricane Center's website here and bring that up. Hopefully soon. Internet is running a tad slow. So if you ever go to this nhc.noaa.gov, which I'm sure many of you do, of course you see what the forecast here is. Tropical cyclone activity not expected next 48 hours. If I checked the 5-day graphic earlier, and it said not expected for the next 5 days. But if you go on satellite imagery, you can pull up the various sectors. So let's take a look at the wide view of the Atlantic just to see what's happening. And there goes the setting sun. You don't really have anything to speak of with regards to disturbances. What you do have is weak, obviously. Take a look at the winds in the Eastern Caribbean. This is a great example of what wind shear looks like, because you see how those cloud tops coming off of South America are moving rapidly east-northeastward. The upper level winds are just taking these thunderstorms that are developing in Venezuela and in those areas up in northeastern South America and just blowing those cloud tops fiercely to the east-northeast. If you look also very carefully in the same area, you'll notice that the lower clouds are all moving from east to west, responding to the trade winds. So that shear zone obviously means that area, you're not going to see any development. And that's usually a zone, by the way, of what we refer to as, semi-permanent shear. It seems to always be there. There are moments where it disappears in those times where you do get systems moving into the Eastern Caribbean. They are often impacted by shear, but you do have situations that we saw, for example, with Maria and with Irma back a couple of years ago, where the shear was non-existent, and these storms carried through as Category 5 hurricanes and maintained their strength. Meanwhile, you've got not much going on in the Eastern Caribbean. I did happen to notice that might be Saharan dust there that's moving across. I'm not 100% sure, but it could very well be. I haven't read their discussions to see whether they have pointed that out or not. But at least in terms of what to look for in the satellite right now for this time of year on the 5th of June, you really aren't expected to find very much going on, and at least that's playing according to form. And of course, on the northwestern side of this, you can see that Gulf moisture that has moved on up. If we look at the Gulf of Mexico satellite loop, and again, it's pretty obvious you don't have anything spinning away here. You're just seeing this long stream of moisture now just getting pretty much pushed up to the northeast. There might be some kind of very broad surface low being analyzed on the surface map. Let me just take a look and see if that is the case. We'll run down. And indeed, they actually do have a surface low plotted to the southwest of Galveston and Houston, a very weak low. But if you look at the wind barbs, you've got southeast winds to the east of it, you've got northeast winds to the northwest of it, and northwest winds to the southwest of it. So there is probably some kind of very weak circulation here. But again, it's inland, and it never really did get going when it was down in the southwest Gulf. I pointed out the last couple of days, I think it's worth mentioning again, at least in terms of climatology, when I looked at where the storms developed during the first 10 days of June, there has never been one in the southwest Gulf. So this would have been a first, but it did not happen. And we'll see what carries forward as we go through the month. And it would not be unusual, by the way, obviously, if we wind up with no named systems during the month of June. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying it wouldn't be a shocker if that happened. The tropical storm that we got out in the Atlantic between the Bahamas and Bermuda back a few weeks ago in the month of May is not necessarily a precursor to an active early part of the season. Sometimes they just kind of happen randomly, and I think maybe at least so far that's where I would put it. Now, of course, things can change in a big way as we go through the middle of the month and head toward the end of the month. Okay, so checking everybody on the chat board. Nice to see you all. I got Scott Briller, the chairman. He is taking care of his mom, who is making progress slowly but surely. So we wish you well, Mom, and get better quickly, because the chairman needs to be back on the live stream chat. Everybody misses him, and the folks on the chat board all expressing their best wishes to you for a quick recovery. Alaska observation from our Alfred Phillips in Wainwright, Alaska. 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 73% humidity, a pressure of 1020 millibars, a dew point, I assume that's 1020 and not 1002, dew point of 34, the UV index a 7. Whoa, that's sunburn time up in Wainwright, Alaska. We've been so used to seeing your numbers, Alfred, with minus signs in front of them that I'm just kind of, I'm getting used to seeing this. New research suggests that the Earth lost 9.6 trillion tons of sea ice. One of the things that was I saw, I didn't get a chance to read it, and I do want to read it to give a full opinion. But in terms of the way the headline was written, blaming the early heat wave in parts of the southeast on the sea ice melt. Now, I'm going to be very interested to see how they made that correlation, because to me, the headline, the way it was worded, kind of implies that, well, the only way you get heat waves in the southeast is when there's a lack of sea ice up in the Arctic regions. So, there have been heat waves in the southeastern part of the United States before. Not all of them have come with a lack of sea ice, or at least as far as I know, unless they've made that connection. But I guess my point is, you got to be really careful when you see these stories and these headlines, and be sure you read through them, because one, the headline could be very deceiving, and also, and I'm not saying that it is, because as I said, I haven't read it yet, but I have seen stories that are really deceiving, where they just sort of make this implication that we have A and B going on, therefore they must be related, that A is causing B to happen. And this is all, wrapped up in that hysteria to take everything to its natural Armageddon conclusion, and the science winds up getting lost in it. And that's always been my primary concern, is that in all of this, where is the science? Show me where it is. Show me what it says. I would like to look at it, and then I can draw my own conclusions. And I would encourage everybody to kind of have that sort of open mind approach to things, and read through very, very carefully what some of these things are saying with regards to these sort of long-term, broad-scale changes that are going on around our planet. And it's I guess what I'm getting at is, you've got people screaming that the end of the world is coming in 12 years. Well, I really would like to take the other side of that trade. I would venture to say that 12 years from now, I will be, hopefully, still, God willing, still doing live streams. I'll be 72 years old. I might be going a little bit slower, and I might be perhaps grasping at my thoughts. I'm having a difficult time of doing that now. But I definitely would like to take the other side of that trade. All right, so just checking out here. Collective hello to everybody, by the way. I and I'm not going to go through the list tonight because I always feel bad when I do because I'm afraid I'm going to leave somebody out. So a collective hi to everybody, and let's see where the weekend takes us. I am betting that the weather for my area anyway should be okay. So we're going to wrap it up here. Let me just do a couple of quick reminders. If you're watching this on a replay, it is 7:37 p.m. Eastern Time on June the 5th. So be sure to check your local National Weather Service forecast, radars, and any of the latest watches and warnings, and you can find that by going to weather.gov. You want to make sure you have the latest information. Also, don't forget, we've started this new weather segment Weather in 5 days in 5 minutes. That is in every morning, and unless I am really in a mess, it will be every morning, 7 days a week. Quick 5-minute update on what is happening in the morning, followed by this much more detailed, longer live stream that we do every night. And tonight I pushed it back to 7 o'clock. I appreciate everybody's flexibility. I know that 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, it does impact some of you with regards to whether you're able to see it or not while it's streaming live. You can always, of course, watch it on the replay, or you can go ahead and watch it on my weather app, which, by the way, you can download for free by just going to Google Play or going to the App Store and searching for either Joe Cioffi, CIOFFI, or meteorologist Joe Cioffi, CIOFFI. It shows up as Joe Cioffi on Google Play, but you got to put meteorologist Joe Cioffi if you go to the App Store, if you're downloading it for the iPhone. I guess Google made it easier to just be able to punch in my name. All right, have a great evening. Be safe out there if you're in an area that's getting severe weather. And tomorrow morning, figure sometime around by 9 o'clock, plus or minus 30 minutes of that, the Thursday morning, June 6th edition of Weather in 5. 5 days in 5 minutes. Good night.